Good Sunday evening, high school sports fans. Joe Gillaway with Lingelstown Gazette Sports, live from the Orchard Street studio. And this is episode 38 of our weekly podcast, Gazette Sports Chat, where we'll get to know participants from various realms of the high school sports world. The student athletes who play the games, the coaches who coach them, and others connected in different ways to the entire experience. We'll introduce you to tonight's guest in just a moment, as soon as we're done thanking those responsible for bringing you tonight's show, our Lingelstown Gazette Sports Platinum sponsors, and they are Rickabah's Electric, Payor Apparel, Ted's Bar and Grill, Freedom Financial Wealth Management, the Tire Mart, Team PA, AAU Basketball, Tonino's Pizza, American Legion Post 272, Hoffman Ford, Capital Region Insurance Agency, Modern Imprint, Sam Hartley Decking, Crystal Bob at Howard Hanna Real Estate, and Underdog Sports Bar and Grill. Thanks once again to these great local businesses for their continued support of Lingelstown Gazette Sports and our area student athletes. Upcoming on Gazette Sports Chat, we have newly hired Central Dauphin East head football coach Tyshawn Pollard. This is exciting. This is another young guy. He's replacing Lance Dean, who did a great job over the last few years at East. Lance is moving on. He's going to take a athletic director job at a neighboring school, but Tyshawn Pollard, by all accounts, is a great young man, knows the game. So we're looking forward to talking to Tyshawn on Tuesday at 7 o'clock, learn a little bit more about him. And I want to encourage you, check out the Perkiomen Valley girls basketball podcast from Friday afternoon. We did it at 3:45 Friday. So you may have still been at work or traveling home from work, or Friday afternoon is kind of a hard time to get viewers. So I encourage you to go back in there. It will be on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. So awesome. Three wonderful young ladies. They got it done at the highest level. And we're going to have the equivalent of them tonight here with our guest. So anyway, tonight's Gazette Sports Chat guest is head coach of the #1 boys high school basketball team in the state of Pennsylvania for the 2024-2025 season. He took over a program just 4 years ago that was coming off a 4-12 season and losing its top two offensive players to graduation. But he got his guys to buy in, believe in him, and believe in one another, and they improved incrementally to the point where every other PIAA team are now looking up at them. It's my pleasure to welcome to Gazette Sports Chat Father Judge, fourth-year head coach Chris Rowntree. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Joe, for having me.
Did I get everything right there?
Yeah.
Okay. So I usually do, but you never know. You know, I got to trust Google. And so anyway, first week of December, 722 PIAA member schools started their 2024-2025 boys basketball season. That's a lot of teams. As of 2 Saturdays ago, a week ago yesterday, one team remained, and that was Father Judge. And I guess I'll just have to ask you kind of a canned question to get started. How did it feel?
It was a great feeling. I think, it probably finally is setting in now with no more kind of basketball, no practice this weekend. There's been a couple days where I haven't had to be at school now. So, it's really setting in. It feels really good. The hard work that our players really put in, and it's a grind. It's not a December to, end of March season. It's really started last March and us in our off-season workouts and then into September this year and all through the fall. So, it's a long grind for our guys and to finish at the top of the mountain. I'm super happy for them more than anything. I'm more proud of the work that they put in and everything that they did to get there.
Good. So just to give the viewers an idea of how huge the state semifinal game against Imhotep Charter was, and then the championship game against Roman Catholic. Imhotep had just beaten you 3 weeks prior in the District 12 championship game. And prior to the 2024 season, you hadn't beaten Roman Catholic in 13 years. How much more gratifying was it that you had the opportunity to win those final two games against Imhotep and Roman?
Yeah, I think, for us, when we got to the Imhotep game, we had played them earlier in the year as well. So it was our third time playing them. And, coming off of the PCL championship, which is the biggest championship in the state, in front of 10,000 people, we just didn't play 32 minutes. And obviously we weren't happy about it. But, from that point on, we had talked about just one more game and how do we Now it's do or die, and we just want to get to 1-0. And when we got there, that's what we talked about. We didn't talk about the game 2 weeks ago that we lost to them in the second half. We talked about getting to 1-0 and getting a chance to send our seniors off with a win. And we talked about, there's only 6 boys teams on the boys side, and the 6A game is the very last team. So to be the very last team to win a game, that's really all we talked about. We knew Roman was going to come out on fire. We had beaten them twice during the year. We beat them last year once, and they took it out on us in the semifinals last year in the PCL. So we knew we had to be prepared. Chris is a really good coach. They have really, really good players, and Tyler Sutton and Sharif Jackson and Sammy Jackson. So we knew we had to be prepared. But again, our seniors didn't want to go out with a loss, and we lost last year in the semifinals to them, and we talked about all year after a loss. Remember the feeling. Remember the feeling. How do we respond? And that's one thing we didn't do great last year as a younger team, and we talked about that a lot this year in terms of how do we respond to losses. And we've done a really good job. When we lost to Carroll, our second to last game, I think, of the regular season, or maybe it was our third. But we had talked about, hey, before that, we were on a 5-game winning streak. And if we can get on a 5-game winning streak, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, that would mean we won the PCL championship. And then we did that. And then we lost to Emotep. And I said after that game in the locker room, hey, we've been here before. If we go on a 5-game winning streak, you guys go out winners. You become the first team to win the state championship, and we'll feel good. And this loss will be in the rearview mirror. So, they did that. They responded. And again, for me, I'm just so happy for our seniors with the work that they have put in to change our program around and the culture of our program. I'm just super happy for them to go out winners.
Yeah, I told you before we got on the air here, I had a really good seat for that game. I was like center court, front row, and the respectfulness and the way that they played, both teams played that 6A final game, your game against Roman Catholic. I left there, I'm driving away, I'm thinking, that's how basketball is supposed to be played. Nobody's wolfing on anybody. Nobody's complaining about calls. Their players are picking one another up. There's always going to be bad plays or, plays that weren't designed that way. And the guys just got up and a little pat in the butt and put their chin right back up and went on. And there was just nothing negative about that game to me, and that it's hard to say that about, a game that lasts 32 minutes.
Yeah.
To say that there was nothing negative. It was just a great game. Somebody had to win and somebody had to lose. So let's back up a bit to the third Sunday in February. You're in the Palestra. For those who don't know, you have to go to the Palestra for a basketball game. I was born in Northeast Philly, so I had a chance to go a little bit, You're playing Roman Catholic for the Philadelphia Catholic League title. Roman had won the title the prior 2 seasons and 6 times over 10 years. Roman is kind of, maybe until now, the cream of, for at least the last decade, the cream of high school basketball in Philadelphia. But Father Judge, you had not won a PCL championship since 1998 when you were still a student there, right? I think you were a junior in high school.
Yeah.
You knock them off. You hoist the PCL championship hardware, which is kind of a disc or a plate of some sort, right? It's cool looking. It looks really cool. Time for full disclosure here, Coach. Which one's sweeter, the PCL or the PIAA, or how are they different? I don't want anybody to say that guy doesn't like our championship.
Nah, we talk about it all the time. I think when you play in our league, our league is so good. It's by far the best league in the state.
One of the best in the country.
Yeah, it's a top 5 league in the country. We travel a lot, so we see a lot of different teams, and I've been around it for a while now. So everybody goes into the year, and you don't really hear our coaches in our league talk about, I want to win the state championship.
Right.
I want to win the PCL championship. And I think a lot of other leagues, that's different. I think if the goal is to win the state championship. The PCL, there's nothing like going and playing in front of 10,000 people. This year it was on a Sunday afternoon. The Wednesday and Sunday, 20,000 fans. I think they had just put something out the AOP put something out. It was the sixth largest attended championship game, including Division I NCAA. So you think about, you have the Power Five conferences, and we were number 6 in the country to have 10,000 people there. It says 8,500, I think, but there are people sitting in the stairways. And that's just a huge thing in the city of Philadelphia. It always sells out. So for me, that's the ultimate goal. And then listen, you downplay the states until you get there, because you want to win the PCL first. And it felt really good. I've done it. Our first year when I was at Wood, we won in 17, and we won the state title, and it kind of didn't feel the same as we won, but we had gone back 3 other times and lost the state title after that. That did not feel very good. No matter what we did, we had Rasul Diggins in them, and we went undefeated in the PCL, won a championship during COVID, and then lost to Reading in the state championship. And it kind of felt like it took a little bit of luster off because you lost your last game from there. So it was important for us to get both. But the PCL it's a big deal in the city of Philadelphia, and for us to win that, it kind of validated us as being the best team in the state. No matter what happened after that, we felt we were the best team in the state. But
certainly, yeah.
It took another grind, and our guys responded and got up to win their last one again, which I'm super happy that our seniors got to win their last one.
I think it's worth mentioning too, and you might not have much to compare to. I mean, you were up here for the title in 2017. But there were fans in those stands for the 6A boys game. There really were. I mean, one of the things that you don't get the average fan. I'm from around Hershey, near Hershey, and there are far less people that just go, "Hey, let's go to the game tonight," just because there's so much more to do. I think that generation's getting older or dying off, and the younger gen. But I'm saying that Roman and Father Judge, they brought fans there because as many fans who were there, there's not a lot from Harrisburg and Hershey. So I credit both schools, both fan bases for showing up kind of thick and making a lot of noise.
Yeah, and there was a lot of blue in there. And when we played down the Palestra, there was a whole lot of blue down the Palestra. We got our first state game at our own place. It was the first, for us, definitely for our alumni, right? It's the first state run in the history of our school. So it was really big for our alumni. Baseball has won, soccer has won, and now for us to get that opportunity, a lot of alumni that might not have followed before were following along on the journey. And it was really great. It was cool. We sold out our first game in our own place. We sold that game out. And then, that game in Norristown, we played TEP at Norristown. There was a lot of blue. That game sold out as well. We knew our fans would travel. I know that, that's always kind of, after the fact, especially when you have 2 District 12 teams up there and a lot of District 12 teams, people talk about the attendance and all of that. But, I thought our game was really well attended. I thought the fans were great from there. I wish the PIAA would figure out maybe a year in Philly and a year in Pittsburgh because, you got to get a casual basketball fan on top of the schools traveling, and there's a lot of casual fans in Philly. There's probably a lot of casual fans in Pittsburgh, but I seen one tweet out there. I think it was Bob Greenberg is his name, who does a lot of things out in Pittsburgh. But it's a long drive for people to come from Pittsburgh. It's 4.5 hours or so from Pittsburgh, so you're not getting the casual fan, which changes the environment. And I think that is one thing you get down here in Philly in the PCL game. It's not just the alumni of the schools that are in there, but there's a true basketball, community down here that follows it. And I think if you took that Roman Judge game in the state final and put that back again at LaSalle or St. Joe's or in the Palestra, you would have probably had close to 8,000 to 10,000 people there again, just for that pure fact.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's back up again and a little bit more this time. You're chosen to lead the Father Judge boys basketball program prior to the 2021-2022 season. I mentioned in the introduction they were coming off a 4-12 season from the prior year, and you had lost the top 2 offensive players to graduation. What's the first thing you do? I mean, you shake hands and thank the athletic director, whoever entrusted you with the job, because that's what they're doing. They're entrusting you with that role. And then what?
Yeah, I mean, we got right to work. So I got the job, probably in May, maybe.
It was in May, by the
End
way.
of May. Yeah. So, we had Philly live in literally like 3 weeks. So trying to figure out how to get that roster, and it wasn't about winning down there, but just kind of getting them to compete and play hard and seeing what we have in the gym from a roster standpoint and component. But it was really getting to work. And, we took 3 to 4 weeks from May to June, got prepared for Philly Live. And then I was in the middle of coaching AAU at that time. So I was coaching team final. We had a really great team, and that was one of the COVID years. So they did like a NBA type of lockdown down in Augusta, Georgia at Peach Jam. So I was away for 3 weeks. So didn't really get to see much of my team in the summer. Got back and just grinded after that. But it was really just trying to, and at that point, when I got back, I probably got the biggest win out of everything. That's where I kind of discovered and got Kavere Kennedy from there. So, Kavere was he was about to go to one of the public schools. I had somebody call me and said, "Hey, this kid lives not far from George. You might want to take a look at him." He came in to work out with our guys, and he just knew how to play. He was a tough kid, and that was an easy decision for us. He got accepted into school, and the rest is history for him. But really, at that point, it was developing a culture for us.
And Kavere, he plays with joy too.
Yeah.
I can't even define that. I actually got that from another coach friend of mine. He coaches girls, and he said the one time, yeah, she plays with joy. And I sat there and I thought, yeah, she does. Playing with joy is just kind of just keeping a great attitude. And, again, we mentioned it earlier, whether you win or lose or you made a good player turn the ball over, he just gets on to the next thing. And he's a great teammate. And I said a minute and a half into the game, I texted my friend. I said, you got to see this number 5, man. I said, he's something else. I said, he's not the biggest kid on the court, probably not the fastest or the quickest or the strongest, but he's just so good at everything, right?
Yeah. And he's our engine. I mean, he came in and I don't want to say him and him alone, but, him and Kevin Beck, who was, part of the previous coaching staff's incoming class. And, a lot of these guys didn't know what to expect from me. I was at Wood for 13 years, I think like 9 years or
8 years.
Yeah. So had a lot of success there with a lot of really good players. And the narrative was, hey, he's going to go out and bring kids from all over the place in and get rid of everybody and things like that. So wasn't the case. We got lucky with Kavere. I got lucky with a kid like Ernest Shelton and Laquan Bird and Kevin Beck and those kids. And really, again, I think, them guys came in, they fit in, but our first year was tough. We struggled. We had a chance, though, to get to the playoffs my first year. We lost our last game of the year, which was essentially a playing game for the 10 seed, and we lost it. We picked up and got right back to work, and it was really our first true off season, so I was super excited about getting our guys into a weight program and strength program, which is super important for us. And, we continue to build. And then, you bring guys like Rocco Westfield and Max Mashinsky and Derek Morton Rivera in that class, which was phenomenal for us. Nas Tyler in the next class, and then Ed Barnes comes in, and he came in late for us, but really over the course of a year in this offseason really reshaped his body and did a lot of great things to get to the level that he got. But you felt each year we took a step. Second year we got to the playoffs. We lost to a really experienced Carroll team at Carroll in I think it was the 8-9 game. And then last year, my third year, we surprised a lot of people. We actually beat Roman at home, which was the first time in forever that we beat Roman. And I think we were 6-1 at one point or 7-1 at one point. We were flying high, and we lost a rivalry game to Ryan. And we didn't do a good job of responding. We were in a funk, and we did not play well going into the end of the year. So we went from, the 1 seed at that point in time to the 6 seed. We had to go on the road against, my former team and, obviously a great mentor to me and Wood, and we knocked Wood off. And that surprised a lot of people, but I don't think it surprised many guys in our our locker room, and we felt we played them well the first time. We get down to the Plester, and we were just super happy to be there. We were excited to be there. It was the first time since '99, which was my senior year, that we made a semifinal game. We got off to a great start, and then Roman's experience and their team was just phenomenal, and we just got down, and it hurt because we lose that game. But Wood got to go into the state playoffs, so we didn't get that extra experience of that playoff experience, and that hurt our guys, and that really kind of led to a great offseason this year. This was one of the best off seasons that we had, with our strength program and all of that, and we felt going into this year that we were one of the top teams in the area, and we had that belief about us all year, and a lot of people down in Philly, thought that going into the year, and then we had a couple losses during the PCL play that people kind of bannered back and forth whether we were for real or not. And our guys
close losses though.
All close losses. And look, Devon Prep, we lost to Bonner at home on a buzzer beater. We were up double digits, I think, or close to double digits in that game, and lost it. We were up against Devon at Devon, and at the time we lost to Devon, a lot of people weren't sure about Devon. They were a really good team. They were returning, state playoff champs, and going on the road at Devon is a tough place to play. Jason's a really good coach. St. Colin was phenomenal this year. Reese Kraft and all the role players, they just play the right way. So we lost there, and again, people doubted us. And then I think the one where we lost to Carroll at home towards the end of the year. But Carroll was fighting for their playoff lives, and Carroll was super talented. And people didn't give them credit, even after we lost to them from there. But we just took a couple lumps, but we learned from it. And we played our preseason schedule so that we wouldn't be undefeated. We needed to learn how we responded, and every time we lost, we responded. We never lost 2 in a row. And that was important for us to get back on the hump. And we knew we weren't going to be perfect in PCL. The PCL is so tough. It's really hard to go, undefeated. And I think when we lost to Bonner, I went back to Ted Solari, and I think the last team that went undefeated to win a championship was like 2013, when Newman was just rolling everybody at that point. And it hadn't been really done since then. So, just really getting our guys to focus in and lock in. And we knew we were talented. We knew we played the right way. And, we just had to lock in defensively and play 32 minutes. And we kept saying, if we played 32 minutes at our best, we didn't think anybody could beat us. And that was kind of our motto in the playoffs.
Turned out to be true.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your path back to Father Judge. I mentioned that you graduated in 1999 from Father Judge. Let's kind of connect the dots here. You played 4 years of college football and earned your degree from a great school like Lycoming, wonderful school. Why football, and how did your next chapter lead you back to basketball?
Yeah, so basketball was my love. I love basketball. I did not play football until I got to high school. When I was a senior when I was a freshman in high school, I got the dress varsity for what we call our Turkey Bowl and things like that, and played my freshman year of basketball, and had a really good year. And I remember going to Coach Cook, who's still on my staff today. I said, look, I'm not going to play football anymore. I'm just going to stick to basketball. And Coach said, no, you're not. You're crazy. There's no 6'2" power forwards playing Division I basketball. You have a chance to be a really good football player. Make sure you stick to football from there. So I did. Lo and behold, I was supposed to go to West Point. Last minute, changed my mind for the military commitment. Ended up at Lyco, which I'm thankful for.
Great school.
Yeah, fantastic school. Coach Girardi, Coach Carey, Rob Carey, Weiser. Them guys are like great mentors to me. I still talk to them. Today they all reached out to me after winning and all that. So had that opportunity. But basketball was my love. I really loved basketball. I loved everything about it. And when I got done college, I started my career in accounting. And when I made my way back to Philly, I got the opportunity to coach youth basketball at a rec center. It's called Ron Hurst Recreation Center here in the Northeast Philly area. And, I just loved coaching. I loved getting guys better and things like that. And then, that led to me starting I had a team there that was really good, and we played under an AAU umbrella here. And my strength coach now, Mark Rodriguez, he was one of the better 8th graders around. And, Newman Goretti had reached out, John Moscow, who was at Newman at the time, reached out to talk to Mark. And then when the Wood job opened up, I had a lot of people that asked me if I was going to go for the Wood job. And I think I was like maybe 26, 27, maybe 28 at that time. And, hadn't really had a high school opportunity or anything like that. So it wasn't even on my mind, but Colin Gillespie played for me in AAU, and, his dad was a football coach there. So mentioned me going and coaching Colin there. I had him since like 6th grade, but John went for it, and John had called me and said, "Hey, I heard you're going for the job." And I said, "No, I'm not." And he said, "Well, listen, if I get the job, would you want to come and coach with me?" And the timing was right. I was single, and I was young at the time, and had some time on my hands. So, the rest is kind of history from there. And, was with him for a long time, and he was a great mentor for me and allowed me to do a lot of things to learn and how to build a program. Because we did the same thing at Wood. It took us 4 years there at Wood, and that's one of the top programs around now.
Absolutely.
So
things probably worked out the way they were supposed to, like with you getting an assistant job under a really great coach, and you guys won 2 PCL titles and a state championship. So you did a lot of winning. You learned how to win as a coach.
Yeah.
You got to learn how to win. You even mentioned about your guys. They probably prior to this year, they were really good, but they just probably hadn't learned how to win, So that kind of brings us full circle here, back to you being a first-year head coach. And this year's championship, seniors being freshmen back then, you can't win championships without something special. There's something special about every championship team. What made this group special, and what were they ultimately able to accomplish that was special?
Yeah, I mean, it's they didn't really care who got the credit, and they all liked each other. And I say that with a smile because we never really had I need to do this or I need to do that, or this is my team, or it was their team. And in the beginning of the year we voted on captains, and we had great leadership from Kev Beck, and at the time Rocco Westfield had just committed to us to playing basketball last spring. So he was around all fall, took a really strong leadership role, and then Kaver's leadership from there. And not to say that there wasn't any bumps in the road, but I think they really enjoyed being around each other, which is really important. I told the story earlier in the year. We had we had played Thursday night, and my strength coach, I think we might have lost to Devon maybe, or maybe it was coming off a win, but we weren't playing on a Friday. And my strength coach said, "Listen, I'm going to reach out to the guys, and I want to get them in on Friday night for a lift. We hadn't really been maintaining that well, and I want to get them back in and get them into a rhythm." And I'm like, Mark, I don't know. I think
Friday night,
you got a bunch of 18, 17, 16-year-old kids, and I don't want to be mad if somebody doesn't go. And I'm like, you can do it, but it's volunteer. I don't want to know who's there and who's not there. Mm-hmm. The next night, the next day, it was Friday, he texted me and said, "Listen, they're all coming in. They're all coming." So all 15 of our guys on a Friday night, in the weight room. And then, once I found that out, I said, "Hey, what do you guys want to do afterwards? Do you guys want to go do something together? The program will help you guys out." They end up spending the whole Friday night in the weight room. They went to Topgolf down here in Northeast Philly and just had that night and that bonding experience. And, I think they really enjoyed each other. When we had times or breaks, they would go over Kev Beck's house and between practice and school, and eat or mess around or whatever they needed to during workouts, because we don't start sometimes till 4:30, and it's just that team bonding. And I think our coaches felt the same way. Like, our coaches really enjoyed being around these guys, so it made it easy to coach. And they're all good kids. And I had they did a release of a film the other night, and one of the questions they asked is like, "What are you most proud of?" And I didn't talk about the championships, right? I talked about the bond that these guys formed, but after the championship and through our state run, the amount of comments that I got about how respectful our kids were, how well they represented the school, both on and off the court, as alumni were, bumping into them at all different types of places. That made me super proud.
Yeah, when their guard was down a little bit, they could have acted any way they wanted to, but they were
Yeah.
still acting the same way, respectful and appreciative that somebody's kind of saying hi to them, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was so happy about. That's why I wanted them to win the last one and all of that. They really enjoyed playing with each other, and we had tremendous team success. We've had tremendous individual success this year. We had 4 all Catholics, which is really hard to do in our league, and
Certainly.
2 of them were first team. Nobody cared who got the credit. We have 2,000-point scorers on the team. Cavere's stats are unheard of. He's going to go out as the best player, but all they talked about was winning. And that's really all they cared about. And, that was really cool to see for them.
Yeah, I thought that he was the best player in the state before I saw that he was voted best player in the state. And there's so many players that I haven't seen, admittedly, but that guy, he just was the full package out there. So anyway, let's talk about just briefly the last 8 days and even go back a little bit, because winning that PCL championship was a big deal too, of course, a huge deal. What kind of whirlwind has it been? The recognition, the high fives, the pats on the shoulder, is it people buying you a beer? I don't know. What's going on down there?
Yeah, it's I think I walked out of the Palestra when we won the PCL, and we went back to one of our sponsors, Maggie's Waterfront here. A former player and a friend of mine owns it, and they do a lot of great things for us. So, we went back there not thinking, not knowing or thinking of how crazy it would be in there. And literally, you walked in, and it was the downstairs and the upstairs, which where we at, was packed in blue.
I love it.
And people, celebrating, and there was. I think I said it in my interview. There was probably every bar in Northeast Philadelphia probably streamed the PCL championship game and was packed. And then you got the same thing in the States. Like throughout the States, it was constant. I walked out of the PCL. I think I had 500 texts.
Wow.
Just on my phone from the time I got to the locker room to my car, which, it was incredible, from some people that I haven't even talked to in a long time. And then the same thing is throughout the States. Brian Mermelstein did a video of the PCL playoffs and a documentary, and he followed us a little bit in the States. And, we had an interview right before the state championship game, and he's like, I would just go on to your alumni page, the Father Judge Alumni Association, and it was just unreal to see how many people were posting. And it wasn't just one post; it was every day. It felt like every hour there was a new post about the basketball team, and it's just been like that. And it's been a great feeling. It's kind of dying down a little bit now, which thankfully we get some time, and my coaches get some time with their families and things like that. But even this week we had 2 nights where we had to do something. We had another podcast. We had, another thing. We got to get together a banquet now and all that. So it just doesn't stop. And, this weekend, though, it kind of set in a little bit. Like, you realize what you accomplished this weekend as a program and as a team. It kind of set in. And that's everybody I talk to, a lot of my mentors and coaching friends and, the president of the school, who's a great asset in our administration, they said, take time to reflect on what you guys accomplished, because it's really impressive on what you guys did and how you guys did it and how quick you guys did it. And again, kudos to my players, kudos to my staff, couldn't be done without them, and our families, the sacrifices our families make. It's really something that we're really proud of.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, at least from my perspective, is you want the student athletes to feel special, because what they did, what they accomplished was special. You still got to get up the next day, put your pants on a leg at a time, like you put your uniform on the night before. But, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, if they're sitting around when they're 80 years old, still friends and hanging out, they're going to be talking about these championships, and that's a fact. So let's close things out with what I like to call 3 coaches. Okay, this is a question I ask coaches only. I'm going to ask you your favorite coach, and maybe an NBA coach or a college coach, then your mentor coach or the coach you learned a lot from kind of in real life, and then the last one, the toughest to beat, the coach that's toughest to beat. Let's start with your favorite coach.
Ooh,
I know you probably have a lot. There's more than one.
Yeah,
Who do you like? Let's put it that way.
I'll give you two. I just think, I really like, I like, people are going to probably hammer me for this because of the way he is, but I love Danny Hurley. I love the way he coaches and the fire that he coaches with, but I think he's been really innovative in terms of, we study them offensively a lot. And his offensive innovation, I think, is really something that we follow. And then the other guy that I love is Izzo. I've always been a big Tom Izzo fan. I think he's one of the top, if not the top, coaches in college basketball. And the guy that's retired, Jay Wright. I've gotten to know Jay pretty well. Throughout Colin Gillespie's 4 years there, so I've gotten to see a lot of things there, and just the way he conducts himself in the class and all of that. I would have to give you three. And
that's fine. Yeah. Izzo to me, he just comes across as a superb leader of young men.
Yeah.
Not that the other guys aren't, because I'm sure they all are. But to me, Izzo, he's the kind of guy I would love to have my son play for. Whether they win or not, and they're probably going to win. So, mentor or the coach that you learned a lot from.
Yeah, that's an easy one for me. Coach Fox, he coached at Father Judge, for a long, long time. I played for him here at Father Judge. Just what you said about Tom Izzo, just a leader of men, right? He was a phenomenal leader, phenomenal coach, phenomenal family man from there. So I got to learn a lot from him, and I got to see after coaching from him as well. So, his son is one of my best friends in life. He was in my wedding. So I got to see him and kind of, he continued to mentor me, as I was a young assistant coach. And, before he passed, I had the opportunity to talk to him about taking the Judge job and whether it would be right for me and we could win here and things like that. And, I remember that conversation like it was yesterday. And, I got to see his wife after we won the PCL championship. She was down on the floor, and, he's just a great mentor. He was a great friend, and, he's missed dearly.
Okay. And one of those coaches, or if there's more than one that's this toughest to beat, going into that game, you're going to have to roll your sleeves up and, just coach your tail off.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't want to, it's anybody in the PCL. I'm not going to pick favorites in the PCL. I think there's two things that makes our league really great. There are three things. One, it's the platform that we put our players on. Nobody in the country gets the pleasure of 10,000 people 2 nights and, throughout the city all year, the platform. And, we have a guy that does all our stats and, all of that for all of the teams. So, it's the platform. Two, it's the players. There's so much talent down here in the PCL. It's the players. But three, the coaches in the PCL are phenomenal. Every game is a grind. Every game is a war. I respect the hell out of all of those guys. Everybody's prepared. A lot of people say, why don't you run a ton of sets? Well, because every time you call something out, the other team knows exactly what you're running. And it doesn't matter if it's the first place team or the last place team. Everybody's prepared. Everybody's getting their guys better. Everybody's grinding. And you have to throw Andre Noble in there as well. I've only got 3 times, but just watching him over the years and the things that he's accomplished both at the state and the pub level, he's right up there with the best. So I don't want to give anybody single out credit.
No, that's a great answer and a fair answer. I mean, for those at home that don't understand what this PCL league's all about, let me see if I can just kind of rip right through this. St. Joe's Prep, Roman Catholic, Devon Prep, yourselves, Father Judge, Newman Goretti, West Catholic, Bonner Prendergast, LaSalle College, Archbishop Ryan, Archbishop Wood, Archbishop Carroll, Cardinal O'Hara, Conwell Egan, and Lansdale Catholic. I mean, it's incredible. It's hard to even quantify the gauntlet that you guys have to go through.
You said the right word. It's a gauntlet. And, you look at 3A, West Catholic wins, right? 4A, Devon Prep wins. 5A, Newman Goretti wins. 6A, there's 2 of us in there. We don't have a team in 2A or 1A.
Right. That's why. Probably.
People, I saw people on social media, Boca Chia, Miguel at West Catholic does a great job. He's won 2 out of the last 3 in his class.
I like him a lot.
People are saying, I can't believe West Catholic's in the state playoffs. They're not even 500. But it's our league and the schedule. So it's not just our league, but everybody plays a crazy out of conference schedule to get our guys ready for the PCL. So we don't play to go 9-0 on our preseason schedule. And, so you see that a team, I think they were 12-14 or something like that.
They went into the tournament, the state tournament, 9-14 and finished at 5.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
So that's a really good basketball team, and that just goes to show the depth and teams that people didn't get to see. St. Joe's Prep won our regular season league, and I think they were 12-1 in the league, and
getting better and better every year.
And they don't get to the state playoffs. They were probably one of the top 4 teams in 6A, up there with Austin, Roman, and Imhotep. So it's a gauntlet. It makes it tough. It's a grind, but it's an enjoyable grind because you're never getting a gimme game. You got to be prepared every night, or you can lose a game.
Right. Okay. Well, Chris Rowntree, Coach Chris Rowntree, thank you so much. I mean, I think I had an email into you as soon as I got into my car. I think you probably got it Saturday night because I said, I just watched everything. I watched the players. I watched you. I watched your body language, how much joy it brought you. And I said, I got to talk to that guy. I said, I have got to get this guy in for an interview. Congratulations on a let's say a great group of guys. I want to congratulate you that you had those guys the last handful of years and what you were able to bring back to the school, to the community. I'm very happy for you. So we're going to keep you on our short list. We're going to do this again next year. See if we can get you in as one of our opening guests. We do a show every Sunday night at 6, and we start with a coach. Okay. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
We really appreciate it, and enjoy the residual of the championship, and then move on to real life again.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Take care.